Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. How are you doing this morning, Nora?
Very well, thank you. I had a lovely holiday. It was just Thanksgiving for those of you who are joining us in real time. If not, this could be joining us in August, but it was just Thanksgiving for us, and the weather was gorgeous and the family time was lovely. How about you?
It was good. It was good. We spent time with family, drove into West Virginia from DC, and it was cold. Oh, you guys have not gotten it yet. Oh my gosh. The temperature has dropped here on the East Coast, at least in the DC area, quite a bit. This Hawaii boy, he don't do well with cold. He don't do well. No, I'm not happy. And I tell people I'm going to be pretty much shivering until May. And that's just the way my body goes. And that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, everybody keeps saying, but you've been here 20 years. I said, I know, but I just haven't acclimated 100% yet. It's weird.
It doesn't matter because I grew up in Southern California where essentially, I would put on a down parka when it was 68 degrees, basically. I mean, because like you, I grew up somewhere really, really warm all the time. And when I went to Northern California, I froze for at least the first 5 years. And now I've lived up here for, almost 40. So I've lived here a long time. But it took me so long to get used to just that slight difference in cold.
Yeah. And it happened here relatively quickly. 2 weeks ago, the overnight low was in the upper 40s. Now, last week, I think we had one day that I left the house, it was 28 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
You
go.
And I just said, no, not yet. This is November. Wait till at least late December.
Ready.
Come on.
I'm not ready.
Well, today's topic is, I'm going to let you lead part of this because you came up with the idea and I thought it was a good one. And you briefly told me where you got it from. So I'm going to have you explain to everybody where you got it from. Today, we're going to talk about living longer, exercising through the aging process and how to do so hopefully without getting injured and whatnot. And where did you come up with this?
I've been watching a series on Netflix called Living to 100, all about the blue zones. And what the blue zones are is demographically defined areas of the world where people tend to live longer, where there's a larger percentage of centenarians, where their health markers seem to be higher, where people seem to live a little longer. And it's an interesting series, but a couple of things came out of it that I wanted to bring up for this podcast, since it is Moving Conversations. And the two pieces were that all of these areas, people were committed to movement throughout their life. And very often the movement was functional. It wasn't necessarily going to the gym or doing something formal. It was that they had a garden and they made their own food and they made pasta every day, or they made noodles every day, or they were sheep herders. So there was something physical that kept them going, very different than how a lot of us live our lives where everything is automated and we don't get out of our cars and we don't walk anywhere. That was part of it. There was just an exercise component that really seemed to decrease dementia. I mean, we know all this from research as well, and increase longevity. The other thing that was a key part of this was a community-based piece that for all of these societies, there's a cultural component of being together, of admiring your elders, of working with the elders, of honoring the elders, of keeping the elders in the family as opposed to putting them in old age homes and things like that. And one of the fun things was, so this guy, Dan Buettner, I don't know how to pronounce his name, did a whole study on this for a long time. And then he also did a study in one town in Minneapolis, a small 18,000 person town in Minneapolis, where he basically said, what of these things that I've learned can we incorporate in this community and does it make a difference? And some of it was making exercise more accessible, just adding bike paths and walking paths and creating kind of a downtown destination that was connected to the suburban areas by bike paths and walking paths. The other one was he had people join walking groups, where they committed to walking X number of miles, a day or a week or whatever it was. And what was interesting was this was in 2009 that he started this project, and about 50% of those walking groups are still active today, or at least when that video was made, which is not too long ago. So the community piece and the exercise piece, and were two things I kind of wanted to bring up in terms of aging and exercise.
Nice. What I find interesting about that is it's not just the movement part of it, but it's the social part of it.
Yep.
And in my facility, this happened years ago. One of my clients was a very outgoing older woman. She was, I forget, early 80s. And she started befriending new members, people who would be new. If they were around her time, she would start befriending them and making sure she went out of her way to make them feel welcome and to talk with them. If they're warming up on the machine, she would get on next to them or stand in front of it and talk. And that social aspect, that if she didn't come in, the new client would walk in and say, "Oh, where's Betty? Betty not here today? Is she okay?" Because of her age, Is she okay? "Oh, no, she just changed till tomorrow." "Oh, thank goodness. Oh, great." And that social aspect really made people, look forward to coming in. And I realized that, especially with our population, we tend to see, retirees or people that are slightly older, that people get used to seeing who they see on a regular basis, which is why some group exercise classes, they have the same 20 people that they've had for 5 years, and, another 10 people come and go. But there's that core group that they know each other, and they're going to go out afterwards and have coffee, or they're going to see each other or something like that. That social aspect really seems to be an important factor with this.
I think it's a huge factor, because the other thing that they talked about was having purpose. I mean, community,
Right.
obviously, but also having purpose. So,
Sure.
And a purpose can be seeing your friend, making sure that Alice is okay.
Yep.
Checking in with Louise, who has been having trouble with blah, blah, blah. And I think it's something too that, in America, they talk about a crisis of loneliness, that especially as people age, they tend to get isolated, whether if somebody lost a spouse, for example, but they're still living alone in their own home, they may not get out enough. They may not be able to get out enough. I'm taking one version, but this happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
At all different ages and points in their life. And so I think some of it is, how do we make exercise and exercise in the sense of engaging and fun and interesting, and to fulfill multiple needs, really, as we age, social needs, along with our physical need for movement.
Yeah. I like the thought of that. And I think a lot of places that have group exercise or silver sneakers, where, the mall walkers, they get together every day. As soon as the mall opens, before the stores open, they're walking the mall. And that's great for places like Washington, D.C., because that's the one thing I'm hearing from clients right now is it's getting too cold to go outside walking. First thing in the morning, it is bitterly cold, and it's only going to get worse. And I can just imagine what New England would be like. So not every place can people do that, but the mall is heated. So that's always a place that people can get together. There's parking. They can get together. They can do their walking. They can do their socializing, and they can walk for however long they want to do. So I find that group exercise classes, aqua aerobics, all of these sort of things add both that exercise and movement component, which is so important, with the social component.
It reminded me of a friend of mine, Terry, who was a photojournalist for a long time. And as he got older, he was a very, very social guy anyway. But he had his buddies at the gym. And he went at least 3 times a week, if not 4 times a week. And he would spend a good 2.5 hours there. Yeah. And the reason, he went for the exercise, yes, but he really went because he hung out with Joe, and he hung out with Bob, and he hung out with Phil, and they would bowl, because he's a talker, he's a good Irish storyteller, and they would chat, and they would work out, and they would chat some more, and they'd go into the steam room, and that's really has kept him healthy for a very long time. He's been doing that now for, I think, 15 years or something, and he's well into his 70s now, and just doing great. And without that social component, I don't think he would have kept it up, because he's a pretty social guy.
Those are the people that irritate the heck out of me on a Saturday morning at the gym, because they're just standing there talking, and I'm looking at them thinking, you're not working. And I have to remind myself that I go to the gym for specific reasons. I want to get in, get out, get on with my day. I want to do my workout. But for some people, that's true. That's their social component. And, instead of just seeing their spouse, this is where they're going to see their buddies, their friends, or something like that. And maybe they only get to see them once or twice a week or whatever at the gym or at the club or wherever. We see this a lot with country clubs and things like that. People, after they retire, they start going almost every day of the week, and they may not play golf, but they'll take a steam, or they'll, play cards and do that sort of thing. But getting them to move is also a huge component to getting them to last longer. Because we're not only talking about their mental state, which the social component tends to do, but we need to talk about the physical state as well. We need to talk about getting them to move more, because if they're just sitting around only playing cards, well, that's great. They're getting some stimulation, but they're not going to be helping their joints. They're not going to be helping their body that much. And that's where we come in.
Yep, absolutely. And that's where, so thinking about, we've touched on this a couple of different ways, but there's something that I like to think about, which is basically adaptability in terms of our physical abilities and physical capabilities. And it's tricky. If any of you have aged, which I assume some of you on the other side of this device will have aged, right? Your abilities change, your flexibility changes, your strength changes. There's a well-known issue called sarcopenia, which is basically age-related muscle mass loss.
Right.
Very, very common as our hormones change and as our connective tissue changes. And so maintaining movement becomes even more important as we age than it was when we were younger. I know I always say, I felt like I could maintain my muscle mass with a minimal amount of effort through my 30s and 40s and really even into my early 50s.
Yep.
And then sometime around my 50s, it was like, oh, I have to actually work at this now. I actually have to do a lot more even to maintain where I was.
Yep.
And certainly now that I'm a little older, it's like that gets just harder and harder. So I think one of the things is that as society is saying, retire, relax, stop working, right? Our physical body actually needs more. It needs more, not high level, not hard stimulation, not CrossFit necessarily, but regular physical activity, movement in multiple ranges, a little bit of cardio to get the heart going, to get the blood moving, some stimulation. And that's really kind of what we're looking at, is how do we keep the body stimulated in ways that are productive, that are useful, that are fun, that are sustainable. Because this is also something, if you're thinking about longevity, what do you want to do for the next 20 years? What can you stand doing for the rest of your life, or at least start with? What path can you start down?
Well, I think from the way I understand it, something like pickleball, when it first came out, I heard that it was tennis for old people. And it was one of my clients who was in her late 50s, who was about to semi-retire. She was an attorney. She was going to move down to Florida. And she said, I just picked up this new sport. And this I had never heard of it before. This is probably 10 years ago. It had just started. And she said, all the elderly people in Florida are playing this. And I said, really? And of course, I go online and I look at it. I said, it's wiffle ball. It's ping pong standing on the table. I was trying to figure it out. I was like,
what is this?
It was but they didn't have to move a lot. And again, there's high competitive leagues and things like that where these people are sprinting all over the place, but they were moving. And as I was watching that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is something that they can participate in a level that, is as hard as they want or as easy as they want. I have a number of clients who have been playing tennis since they were in their 20s. And now they all say, you know what? I like to play doubles more than I do singles, just because they don't have to cover as much of the court. They still have fun. They play every single weekend. It's a way for them to get out. And these are people who like to exercise anyway, but it's their routine. They need to do it. And it's something they enjoy and have fun with. And I think that's going to be something else to think about, is making sure it's enjoyable. Making sure that whatever activity is something that they look forward to, and not just I got to get on this treadmill. Oh, okay. It has to be something they look forward to and find interesting and fun.
Removing barriers to entry.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, so much of exercise is about that at any level with any client.
Yep.
It's like, if you can find something they want to do even if they may say, "Oh, this is so annoying," but they show up every time
Yep.
and they talk to Alice or they whatever. That's when you know you've got them. And I think that's something that is I'd say underappreciated in oftentimes in how exercise is talked about. Exercise is talked about as being tough and hard and sweaty and challenging and in a lot of ways as you age, you maybe think like, I don't need it to be like that, and so I'm not going to do it at all.
Yep.
But I feel like that kind of becomes the thing. And instead it's like, well, I mean, all we're talking about exercise and in terms of this, the blue zone studies is just moving.
Yeah.
It's not high intensity. It's not hot and sweaty necessarily. Could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's moving. It's gardening. It's doing your laundry. It's moving around the house. It's chopping. It's making pasta. If you've ever made bread dough, that's a heck of an upper body workout.
Yep.
Those Popeye arms that bakers have. There's a reason for that.
Yep.
So it's looking at like those kinds of things is what is exciting to you, what's interesting you. Maybe it's bird watching, maybe it's pickleball, maybe it's bicycling with your buddies, maybe it's what are the things that keep you going?
Yeah. Growing up in Hawaii, I always saw the Asian older people in the park Saturday, Sunday mornings doing Tai Chi, doing Qigong.
Yeah.
And it always sort of fascinated me, watching them move slowly. And of course, I'm riding my bike. I'm doing a 100-mile bike ride or something. And that park was around where I would park my car and start my ride. I'm like, they're just moving slow, and, coming all high and mighty as a 20-year-old will. And then one day I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. And don't ask me how I got lucky, but like the only the first American to attain world champion status in Tai Chi taught in Hawaii, and he taught at this park. So I got lucky that I got to meet someone who really knew what they were doing. And I worked there with them for probably, 6 or 8 weeks. And I have to say, I felt incredible. And it was an hour once a week. It was a pain in the butt getting up at, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning to go to the park to do this. But I found that I started looking better, actually, because controlling your body in that slow way, you're actually doing almost an isometric, and you see this with hot yoga and different things. When you're moving your body slowly, you're actually doing isometric contractions, moving from one position to the next. Very slight contraction. It's not like you're holding, you're not flexing, but you are moving slowly. And I found, wow, this is very beneficial. And again, it was social. These people had, they welcomed me because they're seeing someone young. Oh my gosh, this is awesome, but they all knew each other. They looked forward to seeing each other, and that was wonderful. But the movements, talk about 3-dimension. There is no such thing as just one dimension. We were moving all over the place, sweeping, sideways movements and lunging and twisting and turning. It was an incredible workout. And I was very sore the next day after that first one. Thought, oh my gosh, this is a heck of a workout.
I've studied a lot of Tai Chi and Qigong and Eastern art forms over the years. I was an acupuncturist years ago, and our Sifu was taught a long form Tai Chi at a different long time. And then I've done a lot since then. I also did some Korean martial arts early in my career. And one of the things that I really love about it is it's multiplanar.
Yeah.
It's multiplanar. It works on balance. It works on coordination. So you have the brain piece because you have to remember a long sequence of movements. You have the balance piece because you're constantly shifting your weight from one leg to the other. You're moving your arms in pretty much every range of motion that they can, like not with resistance. Sometimes you'll create internal resistance, like kind of imagine you're pushing into a wall.
Yep.
But it's wonderful to see how thoroughly it works all of the joints in all the ranges of motion. And then typically you're doing it with your legs slightly bent or very bent, depending on what version you're doing. So there's a lot of just basic leg strength that gets developed in that. So yeah. And I've spent a lot of time also in Asia, various ways. And I love that. Like you go out, especially in China, you'll see two things. One, in the morning, you'll see all the Tai Chi.
Yep.
And they also have all these great playground devices.
I was just going to say
that are so different. Like we would have like a parkour, right? It would have like bars you could swing on and steps you could go up and down, things you could do pull-ups on. Well, they have like things that rotate.
Yep.
like you're standing almost like you've got two two plates that you're spinning,
Yep.
almost like you're a DJ, that
Yep.
kind of thing, right? So you're doing rotational movements, all kinds of crazy stuff at the parks all over China.
Yep. In Korea too. My very first morning in Korea, I decided to walk to try and find something to eat. And it was before anything was open because my body clock was way off. And I ended up in this park and I was looking at this equipment and I thought, this is weird. And I started playing with it and I thought, this is hitting so many different ranges of motion.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And in Korea, in COEX, they actually had the human hamster wheel. I don't know if you've seen it there, where it's a treadmill that is literally, you stand inside of it. It goes all the way around and over your head and you start walking like you're on a hamster wheel. I found that fascinating. And people were just standing on it and walking and talking with you. I thought, this is really cool. They respect movement and want to do movement.
Yes. Yeah, and I saw that all through China too, because the other thing you'd see is towards the evening, typically, many people live in small houses or small apartments, not always a lot of space, but there's all these big open spaces. And you'd go to any big open space and there'd be a group over there doing ballroom dancing. There's a group over there doing like country western line dancing. There's one over there doing some other group exercise activity. And there's, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 of them doing something. In the evening. And again, it's social, it's physical, and it's getting them out of their houses. And these are just things that I think America needs more of. There we go.
I agree.
We need more of this.
I 100% agree. The thing about trying to train the body as we age, I find there's a lot of components. Yes, there's cardiovascular capacity that we need. We need to increase that as we age. That's a given. So people need to do more cardiovascular work. Balance, that's a given. We need to focus on that. I have people who are barely into their 60s and we focus 5 to 7 to 10 minutes per session on some kind of balance and coordination work because they need it. And then there's also the neurologic. They need to be challenged in new and different ways. So if you do the same 20 exercises over and over and over again, well, guess what? They become efficient at it. Their body's figured it out. They know the pathway. Their brain no longer has to work in order to do that. It just has to go with the flow. And it's kind of like, oh, this again? Got it. Da-da, da-da, da-da. But when you throw something new in there, a rotation, you throw a balance challenge, you throw, an additional step. If you're doing a sideways movement, you throw another step in there like, oh, wait, that's different than before. It's not that much different, but it's enough for their brain to say, oh, wait, I have to learn something new, a new motor pattern that they need to do. And I find that is essential for training people as they get older.
And I consciously add I add that component to things. Like I think about one couple that I'm training who are in their early 70s, and they're both in very good physical shape, but mentally there's some challenges, not big ones, but just, like memory's not great and that kind of thing. So we do just simple step up kind of exercises. I just have like a little thing that we're stepping up on. And I'll do things like, okay, so let's go right, left, right, up with the right, up with the left, down with the right, down with the left, up, right. And then we'll go, okay, left, right, left, right. And honestly, just varying those patterns. And I make them say it either to themselves or out loud, because that's also getting the auditory and the visual and the everything going together. And it's interesting because I work on that and I try to change it up every time. So we'll do a full, in our world, we do a full Pilates workout basically with them. And then the last 10 minutes or so, I'll do these functional moves. We'll do squats, we'll do lunges, and we'll do different things at different angles, but we'll also do these like step up patterns and sidestepping and different things. And those are really simple ways to get the brain and the body going together.
Yep. One of the things that we've mentioned here before that I like to do with things like clock lunges or clock steps, where they're standing in the middle and they take 1 foot and reach out to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Because the leg that they're standing on is going to be doing a little bit of a squat. So they're doing that 30 degrees end range of motion. So they're getting the entire quadricep firing. They're getting their balance component because they're reaching out and lightly tapping. And I'll put colored dots on the floor sometimes, or, different colors of these little balls. And I'll tell them, you know, after they do a set where they go all the way around, then they go all the way around again, I say, all right, now I'm going to call it out. I play Twister. And I start saying, right foot blue. And then they have to look, right foot blue, left foot green, left foot over there, green. And, you know, they start figuring out the patterns a little bit so they know where yellow is, where green is, and things like that. Then I'll say, okay, go get some water, and I'll change them. I'll move them. So now when they come back, it looks the same, but they don't really realize it. Or I'll have them change and go 90 degrees. Just, I want you facing this way now. And I say, okay, now right foot blue. And then they go back where it used to be at 4 o'clock. Oh, no, now it's at 1 o'clock. Dang it. And it just, it changes it enough that it keeps them on their toes. And it's an easy activity. You know, it's involving balance, coordination, a little bit of strength, plus that cognitive, you know, they have to figure out the puzzle sort of thing without giving them a hard puzzle to sort of try and figure out. It's something that should be relatively easy, but it's challenging.
Yes. And so exactly. That's that cognitive component, which also relates to kind of the social component. Our good friend Erica Quest, who we both work with a bunch, does a lot of work on sort of neuroplasticity, and she's taught me several things along the way that I've incorporated. So one of them is, you know, saying what you're doing. So one of my clients, again, whose memory is challenged, I'll just say, you know, talk yourself through every exercise we do. You know, push out, come in, push out, come in, right leg here, left leg there. Like, say it, and if she says it to herself, she can then get the pattern going.
Yep.
Right. So we'll just work on that. And I love changing those orientations. A simple, safe exercise, because a lot of times what we're looking at when I'm dealing with my aging clients of all different kinds is I want stuff that is functional, because that's totally functional. Being able to step in different directions, that whole clock lunge is absolutely functional, because that's going to happen. You're going to have to step sideways, backwards, here, there, depending on what's happening for you. But then having that cognitive component really adds that excitement to it and the game to it.
Yes. Right?
And gets that engagement going.
The gamifying it really, I love to do that, because it does make it a challenge. And I mean, I'm in Washington, D.C. We have a lot of type A personality. We have a lot of high achievers. So they like to do better. You know, they want to, you know, and especially if they've done it last week and they want to do the same thing this week, you're going to see, they're going to be like, okay, was that better than last week? I think it was better than last. You know, they always want to compare.
Right, competitive. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, normally it is, if it's something that's similar, but I'll always throw in a little bit of variety, because the variety can change things. Even just this morning, I was working with one of my clients who's, you know, he's still working. He's in his late 60s, and we were doing walking lunges. He's in great shape. We're doing walking lunges with a Viper, which is this long weighted tube, basically. And I had him do uppercuts. When the left leg went forward and when he went down, he would do an uppercut movement. And then on the way back, I said, now I want you to think about rowing a canoe. And so he had to reach back towards the back leg with the Viper, and it threw his balance way off, and it took him 5 or 6 steps, and he's in good shape. But he finally got it. You could see it was bothering him. It's like, I got to get this. But it was a challenge. It was a challenge. And again, I changed it up because, you know, we have a long hallway. So I said, go down one way. We went all the way down, and he expected to do uppercuts coming back. And I said, nope, I want you to reach back to that back ankle. And it immediately threw him off. And it's something small like that, because I hadn't done that with him before, to change it midstream. You know, that really can make a difference. Or to lunge forward with the right foot and then take that right foot and go into a reverse lunge immediately. So you're stepping forward lunge, reverse lunge, forward lunge, reverse lunge. And then take the hands, and you can reach them overhead, to the left, to the right. So now that center of gravity is being manipulated as well. A lot of things we can change, and we have the variability that we can do and make it fun.
One of the things that I'm going to add from a Pilates perspective is it can be easy in the Pilates environment to do the same thing time and time again. And one
Fitness
of the things we know, right, it is, and you mentioned it earlier, but it's really important to know that, and I think there's a balance here, right? You have to give them the right stuff to make them successful, right? You can't just keep giving them constantly new stuff that challenges them all the time. That doesn't always work well either, because then they're going to feel unsuccessful a good bit of the time, or frustrated or whatever. But that idea of choosing just enough balance and just enough variety. Because what I say is, like, I think of one client particularly who's extremely strong, very adept in every way. but she could talk through any exercise at any time.
Yeah.
Like she could just keep a running dialogue the entire time. So with her, and that means her nervous system is not fully engaged.
Yes.
Right? It's not engaged at least with her physical activity. It's engaged with her, which is the story she's telling. And so in order for her to get her back into her body and out of her voice, basically, I would have to make up these ridiculously hard exercises. Standing on a Bosu, arms up here, doing something kind of crazy with like 17 different props. But that would finally shut her up, because that for me meant her nervous system was active.
Yes.
Right. It was actively learning something and having to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to bring out about what you said was that idea of like, what's happening, that feeling in the body, like, why can't I do this? That's when learning is happening. That's when the brain is waking up. That's when new patterns are being created.
Yes.
Right. If you have a completely, everything's fine, the whole workout, there was no moment of insight. There was no moment of challenge. Right. That can be fine. But if you really want to grow, you've got to have those little moments of like, wait, I can't do this.
Yep.
What do I need to do differently? Right. Yep. Whatever that is. And I think of Pilates, I'll often add, that's why I add unstable surfaces. I'll add a roller, or I'll add an oov, or I'll add a ball or something that makes that nervous system wake up. And you see it, like they suddenly are not talking. They're looking at the ceiling. They're kind of staring at their eyebrows,
yep.
right? Trying to think about what's going on. And that concentration comes in. And that's when you know that the brain is getting involved.
Yep. And I find that in fitness land, we need to sometimes balance variety and consistency.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
same thing in Pilates.
Yeah, you need to be consistent with your exercises. So if I'm going to do something and I want to work their posterior shoulder girdle, they need posture, whatever. So it's going to involve rowing in a bunch of different ways, okay? Whether it be from a cable, a band, whatever it is. But a rowing activity. But I don't want to always make it, I want them to see some success. So I'm going to continue to do certain exercises week after week, so they can physically see they're getting stronger, like a pull down or a row, so they can see, oh, the weight's going down, I'm feeling stronger, great. But I will throw in some variety and make them do it one-handed occasionally. But I sort of have my consistency portion, and then I'll throw in a little bit of variety as well. Because if you always throw in variety, and I see some trainers who would that's all they do is throw in new things, it's great challenging. However, are they really getting stronger? There's no way to know, because you're not doing anything consistently enough for them to see the weight go up. And a lot of times they'll say, well, am I getting stronger? I say, well, do you feel stronger? Well, yeah, but I notice I'm still doing the same weight on the leg press that I did a year ago. Well, we only do the leg press once a month because we're doing lunges and squats. Sometimes having the consistency is just as important, so they can see that success. And that's how they're going to get stronger.
Yeah, I say that a lot. And I talk two different ways. So if I'm working with a high level performer, so a high level dancer, athlete, whatever, I can do more variety. Like I might be doing variety simply because I want their motor patterns to be waking up, and because I know with those clients, they're often doing a lot of their basic fitness work not in my facility.
Sure.
Right. They're dancing 5 days a week. They're, running, 30 miles a week, whatever's happening. So they're doing things outside of what I'm doing that is going to keep them in basic shape. So I can add more variety in that environment, cross training and keeping them going, but I can also add more variety in that environment. If I've got somebody who really is not doing anything except what they're doing with me, which happens a lot, right? Or maybe they're walking and they're doing Pilates, or they're, doing a little something, then I know that I've got to really commit to making that strength and that consistency part of the program.
Yes.
So those clients I almost do a 90-10 rule. Like 90% of it is going to be stuff that they've done. The nice thing about the Pilates environment is I have many ways to do the same thing. So I can do footwork on the reformer. I can do footwork on the chair. I can do variations of footwork on the trap table. So I've got different environments to do the same basic muscle groups, the same basic activities.
Yes.
And so I'll vary it that way, but we'll get over those things. And then maybe 10% of it will be stuff that is really new and different, right? Just adding a little something here, adding something there, getting them excited about something. And if I've got somebody who's in a little better shape, it might be more like 80-20, but somewhere in those ranges is kind of what I look at. Again, unless somebody is in super good physical shape, and it really is about the variety.
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm closer to the 80-20 myself with
Mm-hmm.
the majority of my clients. However,
Yeah.
the ones that I'm not are the ones who are physically limited.
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah.
that's going to limit what we can do anyway. But also, I
Mm-hmm.
want them to get stronger as fast as possible. So I may focus on something like standing up and sitting down. You know, we
Yeah.
have the shuttle leg press where they're lying down imitating a squat. I may make sure that that's part of it every single time because
Exactly.
that's
Exactly.
functional. And I can show
Yeah.
them they're getting better at their functional activities. So except for those clients, I usually do the 80-20 where I know about what their workout's going to be, but
Mm-hmm.
I do want that 20% of every workout. So if I have an hour, maybe 5 to 7, even up to 10 minutes are going to be something that's completely different. I just had a client leave here literally last hour that I had them doing the grapevine in the hallway, and they hadn't done
Uh-huh.
that in a long time. And I was looking for
Yeah.
ways to engage your hips differently. So I said, I
Yeah.
want you to do this. And I've got a friend of mine who's a athletic trainer and has worked with, the Cubs and the Tigers and, these professional teams. And he loves this exercise because he can have them do it and really have them twisting their hips. So you're getting your spine engaged. You're getting that rotation of the spine. You're crossing
Oh, yeah.
over, getting the
Yeah.
hip joint to do internal and external rotation with each step. It's
Yeah.
a great thing to do. And once she got into it, she was like, I remember this from aerobics, years ago. And I'm like, yeah, but you only did a couple steps. I'm having you do 40 steps one direction and 40 steps back. But,
Right.
but she was enjoying it and it was fun.
Yeah.
And I was doing it right there with her because why not? Instead of walking, do it too. And she just found it fun and it was a challenge and it was a little variety. She was successful at it, so she felt good about herself. But more than
Yeah.
that, it was incredibly beneficial for what I needed her hips to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think about there's one client that I had who had arthritis everywhere. She's an older gal, arthritis everywhere, and she was quite short, and she did a lot of travel. Her husband liked to do kind of adventure-y travel. So she ended up in funny situations like having to crawl onto buses and that kind of thing, and
Sure.
strange places. And she was interesting because she had so many limitations that we basically did exactly the same workout
Mm-hmm.
with one, like I would change one exercise. That's
Yep.
all I would change for her because that's what she needed just to maintain her strength
Mm-hmm.
and to keep things organized and not irritate things.
Sure.
So she was an extreme example, but I really like literally if I was gone for a period of time and said this was working with her, I'd say, do this program.
Mm-hmm.
Don't vary it, no variety, just do this. And in her case, that worked well because it kept her strength up. It was very specific for her limitations and for her needs in terms of staying functional.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Just a reminder, you're listening to Moving Conversations with Brian and Nora. Our socials, movingcombos@gmail.com. If you want, hit us up. Let us know what you like about the program. If you want anything for us to cover, give us a heads up. We're on Instagram as well as Twitter at Moving Combos on both. So yeah, reach out to us and say hey. Now, the other thing I want to sort of look at with doing this, working with older clients, I think instead of thinking about them being so old, I'm going to say the transitional. I'm going to say the 50-year-old, 60-year-old client. Because something that I find in almost every one of them, mainly guys, but also some women, they're trying to replicate what they used to do when they were younger.
Yes.
Their bodies used to be able to, whether it was I could bench press so much or I could squat so much or I could do this or I could do that, but they also want to push as hard as they did back then. They want to,
Yes.
They want to be sweaty
Yes.
and, oh man, that was such a great workout. But then it takes them 5 days to recover.
Mm-hmm.
That's not beneficial.
Right. Right.
Once in a while, sure. If you haven't exercised in a while, you may be sore or you haven't done lunges in, a couple of months and you do them. You're going to be using the bathroom a little differently for a couple of days. And that's just goes with the territory. But we don't want to cripple them. And that shouldn't be every single workout because as we age, our bodies don't recover nearly as quickly as they used to.
and I think I know for me personally, and I know many of my clients, figuring out what that line
Ooh, yep.
is a real period of frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Because you make the assumptions like, oh, well, I used to be able to do X, hike 15 miles or whatever on the weekend. And then you haven't done that in 4 years. And so then you do that and you're like, oh my God, I've got plantar fasciitis. My tendons are irritated.
Yep.
My knees are unhappy. And it takes you 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to get better.
Yep.
Right. To actually feel like things are back together. And it's like, okay, well, I went too far.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's going too far and then there's not doing anything. And it's finding that place in between. And that can be a moving target.
It is. It absolutely is.
Right. It's definitely a moving target for everybody that I work with. And that's the challenge. It's like, okay, well, do it. I don't know how many times I've attempted to give the advice of, be moderate. And they just ignore you completely because that makes no sense.
Yes. Because
really, I have to say, this may be because I'm not a good trainer, but it may be like you can't encourage them. You can't encourage them one way or the other. It really is a trial and error situation. You can give them some guidelines, but basically it's like they're going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to see how long it takes them to recover, and then hopefully you can slowly increase what they're doing, and their recovery time can get a little bit quicker.
Yep.
But that is never a linear process.
It isn't. And my philosophy with this, whenever I talk with any client about, because when they first start with me, they all expect to work out incredibly hard because I'm a trainer. I'm going to work them hard. And my philosophy is do just a little less. Over the age of 50. Now, if I've got a 25-year-old in here, I'm going to kick your butt. I'm going to make sure that you're going to feel like you had a workout. Even into their 30s if they're in fairly good shape. If they're in their 40s and haven't exercised in years, well, you know what? I'm going to do a little less than what I have planned. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to put a little less weight on to start with. Now, sometimes they blow it away and say, that was too light. And say, warm-up set. Here we go. Now we'll do a working set.
Right.
And that'll help me gauge.
Yes.
But I plan to do just a little bit less because I don't know what their connective tissue is going to be like. I don't know how they're going to respond to these exercises. And when you are over 50, I train with my 16-year-old. We go to the gym every Saturday. And I push him a little bit. I'm still stronger than he is. Okay, I've been lifting weights for a long time. I'm still fairly stronger, and but he's catching up real fast. Holy moly, is he catching up fast? I mean, now I'm able to do 15 reps at one weight. He can do like 8, and I'm thinking, he's going to blow by me really quick.
Yeah.
But I have to remind myself, I'm not keeping up with a 16-year-old.
Right.
I have to always remind myself, do a little less. About probably about 3 months ago, I was teaching him how to deadlift with a hexagonal bar, so you step in between the handles. And, I was doing a decent amount of weight a while back. So for me, when I put on just a little bit of weight for him, I felt like this is nothing. So I said, I put on the bit, 45 on each on top of it. No problem. I had the capability to lift it. I could lift it, However, my body did not recover very well for a few days afterwards. My back was sore. I was feeling it a little bit. And I thought, okay, I pushed it. Now, 2 weeks ago, we reintroduced that exercise. I did his weight. We started off with 10 pounds on each side and the bar. That was it. And I did feel like, oh my gosh, this is so easy. But I thought, you know what? I got to get the neurologic pattern back. I have to get the motor function back and the patterns back. But you know what? I felt okay afterwards. I felt good afterwards.
Right.
So it's like, okay, it's okay for this session to not tax me to that level.
Yep.
I can build up and I can take the next year building back up my weight if I choose to. And again, if I choose to.
Exactly.
And I may never want to. It's like, look, I've got a 16-year-old. What heavy do I need to lift now? I got him to lift some of the things around the house. Come on, muscle man. Show me what you got. But it is, do just a little bit less, at least to start with. And then if you're feeling good, you can take it up a little bit. But that's been my philosophy with age. Weight-wise, intensity-wise, do just a little less.
There's also there's been a lot of studies that talk about people that consistently exercise and people that don't.
Yeah.
And people that consistently exercise, this has been a long-term thing that they talk about. Basically, say they exercise at 80%.
Yeah.
They give 80%. They don't give 100%. They give 80%. They do 80% 5 days a week or 4 days a week or every time they go out, but they do 80%.
Yep.
And that means that they can come back the next day and do it again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you give 100%, you often can't come back the next day or 2 or 3, or in your case, 3 or 4 weeks and do it again, right? And so that's that thing too, is it's like, what can I do on a regular basis to keep things going? Because that's, in many ways, that is more important than the sudden burst of something. You know, the fact that you can go to the gym every day or go out for a walk every day or go do Tai Chi or whatever you're going to do. And you can do it with comfort and with variety and with enjoyment.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And you're not scared to do it the next day.
Right.
Because that's the other thing is, I've had so many clients too who get an injury and it's like, oh, I shouldn't ever move again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the beginning of a very negative spiral.
I also find that every single person has a different balance of what works well with their body.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they come to us, they're paying me roughly for an hour workout. Not everybody can handle an hour of pure weight training or an hour of pure Pilates or an hour of pure cardio or an hour of whatever to a certain intensity level. And I've discovered that with my body. I get in here at a little bit before 5 a.m. and that's my time to work out. And by the time I come in, change, put my stuff down, it's 5:15. And I found, what works for me is a half an hour of cardio at a decent level, get my heart rate up to 75%, and then 15 minutes of fairly intense, either weight training, rehab, if that's what I'm working on, or core work or whatever it is. I decide what I'm going to do. And that 15 minutes, I feel like I can go pretty hard for 15 minutes, but then I'm done. And then I do some stretching, I lengthen, and I'm done for the day. Whereas I know if I did an hour of that, which is my mindset is like, go to the gym at least an hour, that's too intense for my body. At 52 years of age, it's kind of like, you know what? That's a little too much for me right now. And I think I just need to take a step back. So 15 minutes of it at higher intensity is fine. And I just find that worked for me. And everybody has that balance for them.
Exactly. I think of my husband, Al, who some of you might know, but Al's a serious cyclist. And so he'll cycle, he'll go out for 3 or 4 hours, like 2 or 3 days a week and, ride 30, 40, 50 miles. And for me, it's like, I don't really feel like that's not my thing. So, I have cardio here at home. I'll do cardio for 20 minutes. I'll do a half hour or so Pilates. I'll do some stretching, some mobility work. And that's kind of my thing. It may be an hour. It may not be an hour. But it's like, what does it take? What's the rhythm that works and that's sustainable and that can keep you going? And
I think you need to be mindful of that when working with our clients is, I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can see this. Not everybody can though. You can see when they start to slow down during the session where they're out of breath a little bit more. I may be taxing them more neurologically. And so now they're, you can see that their brain is fried because we're doing something different. And you can see that their brain is tired. So now it's going to be like, okay, now we're going to do tricep push downs. We're going to do something mindless, where I can still keep your body moving. We're going to do it with a relatively easy weight. You're still going to get benefit from it, but it's not going to require that same mindset. Or if they're doing, more higher intensity kind of stuff, I'll do that for 20 minutes of the session, for some people. And I can see where they start to wane a little bit. Then it's like, okay, we have to change this up. Let's go do something different, which they will still be challenged. But I'm going, okay, this is more mobility oriented, or this is more balance oriented, or whatever. It's almost
thinking about the workout as a topographical map. Right. So, topo maps show altitudes and valleys, peaks and valleys, because a lot of times you do that, right? You're aiming for a certain peak, right? You're aiming to a certain point, and then it's like you see it calm down, then you got to do something that's like a little bit of a recovery time.
Yep.
So still a good exercise, but maybe not involving so many muscle groups or so much effort or so much mental effort.
Yep.
Then maybe you want to do something that's more mental, not so much physical. It's like a coordination exercise or balance exercise. And it's like trying to give that sense of variety too, in terms of intensity and in terms of focus.
Yep. So that's something to keep in mind is we really need to pay attention to our clients and not necessarily what we planned for that session, because how many times have you had, I still remember I consider her like my sister. She's my bookkeeper. I've trained her for years. I will create the perfect program for her for that day, man. And I'm going to be like, yep, we're going to do this, 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 and this. She'll come in and there's something wrong and I have to scrap it, throw it away, and start over with what I'm seeing in front of me. You can plan anything you want, but until you see that body come in front of you and see how it's moving on that day. I had a client this morning who came in and she was almost manic. She had so much energy, and she's not a low energy person to begin with. She's about neutral almost all the time. And today she was bouncing off the walls, and it was kind of neat to see. And I took advantage of that a little bit with some of the exercises, but I could see she could handle a little bit more. So we probably did a third more exercises today because I could move a little bit faster between things because of what I saw in front of me. And other times she'll come in and she'll be on the opposite spectrum. She's stressed out from work or whatnot, and we have to do a little bit more low key where I have to take away 20% of what I had planned to do. So you also have to be very mindful of the client in front of you and don't just say, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's the exercise du jour for you. No, it really has to be tailored to what you see that client doing in the moment.
Always, right? Customization is why we get paid the big bucks, right?
Yeah.
That's why people come to us. It's for the customization and really to provide that. So wrapping this up, we've gone as we do. We've gone through many different pathways here, down many different roads. Thinking about maintaining muscle mass, right? Thinking about maintaining strength, maintaining function, looking at ways to encourage clients outside of the studio to join a walking group or start biking or do Tai Chi or do dancing or something that they enjoy, find something they enjoy, swimming, whatever it is.
Enjoyment, yes.
Just something they enjoy, right? That because they often can't afford to see you or me often enough to really keep them in shape.
Absolutely.
They really need to think about how are we going to keep them moving the rest of the time, because 2 or 3 times a week, once an hour is not going to do it. And then once they're in with us, it's like really staying focused on what are their capabilities? How can we gently push those capabilities? How can we encourage them to really recognize their strengths and to take it, be careful of their weaknesses if there are any. And doing some of the cognitive work, I think, is a really key point in there too. So what are they doing outside? Paying attention to what they're doing inside. Do not neglect the cognitive piece, the challenge piece, however that shows up. Many ways to do that, but bringing the cognitive piece and then focusing on what are their goals, what's their daily function, what are they trying to do better?
Yep. That's a good point, is what are their activities of daily life? Making sure they can continue to do those. One of the easiest exercises that I teach everybody over the age of 50 is kneeling on the ground and standing up. Bring that leg forward, and basically it's a lunge, but all the way to the ground. Stand up, then put the knee back down and switch legs. It's simple, it's easy, but it's functional. And it's something they need to continue to do. So adding that functionality is also very important.
Yeah, and I think we also talked about the clock lunge, which I use also. We talked about step-ups in various varieties. Like I think all of those really simple movement patterns that you can add a cognitive component to or a gamification component to are really incredibly valuable. And guys, if you're in the Pilates studio, you can always add those at the end of a session, the beginning of a session. That's what I do. I do it at the end of the session. I save the last 10 minutes and we do all kinds of standing stuff to try to integrate everything else they're doing into an upright position and also give that cognitive component in a functional way. And
another thing that I'm going to add to this is sometimes take that simple movement and try and do it in another dimension. Try and take it to a third dimension. So they're moving in all
Yes.
3 dimensions. So if they are doing a
Yep.
step up, they can maybe do a 90-degree step up. So they have more rotation.
Yep.
It's going to challenge their balance more. It's going to challenge their cognitive ability more. And
Yep.
they're going to be getting a lot more beneficial, more bang for your buck.
Yep.
So working
Absolutely.
in ways where you're challenging them in more directions than just the sagittal plane, very, very, very important.
I do a lot of side step ups where it's like a platform and they step up with 1 foot down to the side, up and down to the side, up and down to the side, or else it'll be a small box. They'll step forward, they'll step side, they'll step back off of that.
Yep.
And so again, you're working on different components, different angles of the hip. We talked about the 3-dimensional hip, the 3-dimensional knee,
Yep.
working at how the spine moves and preparing them for the unexpected.
Yes.
Right, because a lot of functional moves is to prepare people in case that small dog of theirs runs under their feet at a funny moment, or whatever, or they're on ice if they're somewhere colder like you are. So
I just had a client today say yesterday she had a big thing of laundry. She was walking down the hall and her grandchildren were there and left a toy in the hallway. She couldn't see it because she was
Exactly.
carrying something. Stepped on it, bounced into the wall. She said, I should have landed on my face on top of this laundry, but I was able to catch myself and right myself, and she was okay. So again, that's the goal. We want them to be able to do that.
That's the goal right there. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Kathy Grant, who was a Pilates teacher for a million years, used to take the subway into Manhattan to teach. And the subway, if you've ever been to the subway in New York, is not exactly a stable surface. It's always like wiggling and bouncing, sometimes rather acutely. And she would stand the whole way into the city.
Nice.
She didn't have to. She could have sat down, but she would stand on the subway to have that balance challenge, right? Because that's completely unexpected balance challenges usually, right? A sudden stop or a sudden miss, and you've got to hold yourself together. And that was something that she would do just as part of her daily practice to keep herself moving.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys have some practical things that you can do. And again, if you want more ideas about 3-dimensional training, go back into the archives, 3-dimensional hip and knee. We've got both of those in there. So that'll help you think a little bit more outside the box instead of always working sagittally. And like I say, I think we covered a lot today.
I think we did.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys for joining us. And again, at movingcombos@gmail.com or on Instagram, Twitter, at movingcombos. You can always reach us there. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.